I'm going to be testing out 10 of the best concealers to see which one works best to cover my under eye dark circles. I'm going to try every single one so that you guys can also see just how drastic the transformation is and just how well it sets with powder after too. So let's get started. I'm going to remove my under eye area first. As you can see, I've taken the concealer off on my under eye area and I've actually applied a little bit of eye cream because I really want you guys to see exactly how you would be applying it usually, which is applying your eye cream, your skincare and everything, and then applying your under eye area like concealer. As you can see, my dark circles are in all their glory for you. So we're gonna just go ahead and start. I'm gonna be using one on this side, one on this side. So we're gonna do two at a time and then move forward. So the first one that I am gonna be using is the Laura Mercier Real Flawless Weightless Perfecting Concealer. This is in the shade 3W1, and this is actually a new concealer which has skincare infused in here. So I wanna go ahead and just apply this here. I'm gonna apply the concealer every time in the exact same way with each concealer. So I'm gonna get my sponge now, and I'm basically, my sponge is damp by the way, I'm just gonna go ahead and start kind of like buffing that in. I'm also gonna be using the like kind of similar amount of concealer each time, so as close as I can get it. So I just want you to know I'm not kind of applying more of any specific concealer. I'm using the same amount each time. Okay, so as you can see, we've blended it over. I've kind of buffed it in exactly how I usually would do. I actually really do like this concealer. I do feel that I could probably go in with another layer, but we're gonna keep it the same for each one. Now I'm gonna be using my loose setting powder each time to set it, because that's what I would usually use to set my under eye area. So I'm using my Makeup Forever Ultra HD powder in Light Banana, and then I'm just gonna set it with a brush. So I'm not gonna bake or anything, because I know that not everyone does bake. So I'm just gonna get a brush and then lightly kind of press it over so that we can set the area to see what this kind of sets like. And I am gonna have a closer look in the mirror in a sec, just to kind of explain what happens here and how it looks. Okay, so if I look up close, I can really see that it isn't kind of creased or anything. The powder's actually set it really well. Even though I'm saying the powder set it really well, I do want you guys to understand that that has a lot to do with the concealer too, because I have used products before where I've set it in exactly the same way as I usually do, and it just for some reason doesn't sit very well with that powder. So there are some specific products like concealers or foundation that I feel like don't suit baking, for example, or pressing it on with a brush or something like that. I always find it's important to know, as well as coverage and how does it look on your skin, like does it work well with other products, you know? So I feel like this does, because I feel like it's set really nicely with the powder on top. It definitely doesn't look cakey, by the way. Close up, like there are no kind of like lines or anything. It doesn't look like there's a lot of product there, and I have actually used a decent amount, to be fair. I mean, if we look, you can really see the difference here. You can see how much of a difference there is like compared to the other side. It really does kind of cover everything up. I like the coverage, although I probably would have gone in with a little more. I feel like I would need a little bit more because it still seems a little bit kind of dark there, but it's still a very good concealer. Next up, we're gonna use the Makeup by Mario Surreal Skin Awakening Concealer in 280. All these colors are very similar, by the way. So I'm, again, applying the same amount. Gonna go in with my sponge and keeping it in the same place, buffing exactly how I did before. This is a very good concealer for brightening, by the way. I feel like if you have dull, tired looking skin, it's a good option. Let's go in with the powder now. Okay, how's this looking? I would say this is quite, like I said, brightening. So I feel like even with the amount that I applied, I feel like I'm getting a decent amount of coverage with that. Like I don't feel like I would have to go in with another layer. I really like this concealer. I genuinely do like it. I feel like it's quite brightening, it's refreshing on the skin. I feel like I'm getting that kind of nice kind of bounce off on the under eye area from the light. It sets really, really nicely. It doesn't feel heavy on my skin. It doesn't look dry and chalky. I feel like this is a concealer that I would use on a day-to-day basis. Like I feel like you can get amazing coverage from using the smallest amount, and I feel like it's more my color, because I feel like it doesn't actually change color on the skin like some concealers and foundations do. Like I have used this before, but I am really, really happy with that. Like I feel like it's given me that really nice lift. Obviously that all depends on how you apply it too, but I'm happy with that. So moving on to the next. So I'm ready with nothing on my under eye area. Again, I've applied a little bit of eye cream, and the next concealer that I'm using is my Maybelline Instant Age Rewind Eraser Multi-Use Concealer. And because I take the sponge tip off, because I don't like using the sponge over and over, I've got like a bit of it on my hand, and I'm just gonna apply it with a brush, same way that I apply most of my concealers, and then use my sponge. I find it really hard to find the right color for myself within this range. So I'd say that's already like a negative point for me. Like it's just either too light or too pink or too orange. That's the only thing. Like I like the finish. I like how it sits on the skin, but I just feel like they need to get the colors right, you know? Yeah, obviously you can see it's a little bit brighter than my skin tone. This is probably the closest I can get, honestly. So let's have a look. I really like the texture of this concealer. I love how spongy and creamy it is. Like it's very kind of mousse-like. And when you put it on, I feel like it's just the perfect kind of consistency. It's like, honestly, the color is the thing for me. I feel like you get good coverage with this. It's a really good concealer for sure. Yeah, I like the coverage. I do feel like this concealer is a little bit more obvious when I look close up than any of the other concealers I've used so far. Like I'm using the same mirror, looking at it as close up as I am for each one. And I do feel like this one kind of almost sits on the skin a little bit more than the others. Like the others somehow seem to like sink in a little bit. And I don't know if that's the skincare in there, the ingredients, or how they've changed it so that it can actually improve the condition of your skin over time. I feel like this gives you great coverage, but I can see it's a bit more cakey on the skin. But the under eye circle is covered really, really nicely. I'm happy with that. Next up is my Tarte Shape Tape Concealer in 35N Medium. My ride or die. Honestly, this is the most amazing concealer in my opinion because of everything, because of how it lasts as well. Okay, so we're gonna go in with my sponge, and I'm just gonna set this in a bit. There you go. Still love it. I still love this concealer. I just feel like it's quicker for me to blend in. The coverage is insane and the colors are good. Like I know which color I need to go for, whether I'm tanned or whether I'm not tanned. I'm just super happy with this concealer. I feel like no matter how dark my dark circles are, like I can always get them covered with this concealer. I can always rely on this concealer. Let's go in with some powder and let's set this. I mean, again, like I mentioned, I use this concealer all the time. I absolutely love how it looks when you put the powder on it. Like it sets it just is flawless. For me, this is a flawless concealer. I can always rely on it. Like I said, it gives me the lift like I want, but it stays there. That's the thing. Sometimes you get that really nice finish with a concealer and you've set it and it looks amazing. But after a little while, it's almost like a bit deflated. It's like, where did all that amazing look go that I saw? Do you know, it's just not as good a bit later. And I feel like this always ticks the box for me. It's really good. So that's my opinion on that. Moving on to the next. Now we've got the Charlotte Tilbury Beautiful Skin Radiant Concealer. My shade is 9.5 Tan, and I'm gonna go ahead and apply this here. Okay, let's go ahead with the sponge. I'm not that impressed with that. I'm not that impressed with that. I've used that concealer before, by the way, but then bear in mind, I'm making sure I'm using the same amount for every concealer that I use. So when I've used that concealer before, I've probably gone ahead and applied more concealer after, because I've probably seen, okay, I need a bit more. But when you're actually comparing it to all of the other concealers and you're using the same amount, I feel like you can really tell, like, okay, in order to get that flawless finish, I'm gonna have to use a lot more concealer. And ultimately, you don't wanna have to, right? You want it to last you as long as possible, because otherwise you might as well just go and buy a concealer which you can use less of, but it gives you an even more flawless look. I'm not convinced about this one in terms of for the amount that I've used. Like, I feel like it's just, I can still see the dark circle, I can see the hollowness there. I mean, I know that concealer is never going to get rid of hollowness, but you know, the brightening effect of a concealer can sometimes help to disguise the hollowness. And I just feel like this is brightening, but it doesn't really help with dark circles. Like, I can still see the darkness there in comparison to the other concealers I've used. You know, it looks fine close up. It doesn't look like it's heavy or anything. It's just, you know, that was really weird the way I held the brush there while I'm holding it that way. By the way, in case you've noticed, the plaster's on a different finger now. You know why? I realized a second ago when I was putting eye cream on, I was like, why does that hurt, that other finger? And then I was like, oh my gosh, I put the plaster on the wrong finger because that cut that I've got is so fine, you can't see it. I put the plaster on the wrong finger. Okay, moving to the next concealer. I'm gonna use my Hourglass Vanish Concealer, and this is in Beach. So this is a very ultra creamy concealer. I always kind of find that this one is similar to Tarte Shape Tape, but a bit more creamy. And doesn't set as quick itself. But the coverage is pretty insane with this concealer. I mean, that is brightening, definitely. I mean, maybe it's a bit bright for me, a bit too bright, but it's definitely covering the dark. Look at the difference. It's definitely covering the dark circles. Let me set this now. I mean, this, like I said, it stays more tacky on the skin. It doesn't dry quickly. Let's go ahead and set this. I mean, the coverage is pretty good, right? It covers perfectly. The dark circles are completely gone. The hollowness isn't as obvious as this side. Obviously, it's a bit bright, so, you know, maybe a slightly warmer shade for me. But the warmer shade to this, I believe, that would suit me is Dune, which is a little bit too warm. So I went for this one. But it's a really good concealer. It sets really well. It doesn't look cakey. It is a high coverage concealer, so you're gonna get, this is gonna cover any kind of dark circle. I don't even believe you'd need color corrector with this concealer. It's that good. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? I mean, this isn't just about comparing the ones that I put next to one another, but overall, this has been the worst so far, and this next to Tarte has been the best so far for me. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below while I get ready for the next one. Next up is the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer in Ginger. I feel like this is just a global concealer everyone knows of. And I don't know why, but anyone I speak to who uses a NARS concealer uses the ginger shade. It's like, how many people, how many skin tones does this match? It's so bizarre. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply this. By the way, I just wanna let you know that every time I use my sponge, I'm squeezing it into a tissue to take off any excess from the previous concealer. So I don't want you to think it's not building up or anything. I'm being very fair about this. So I'm gonna go ahead and now blend this. And this is a concealer that apparently everyone loves. I don't really use it for my under eyes. I have used it to kind of sculpt the face a bit, but I don't really use this for my under eyes because my dark circles are pretty bad, I feel like. It really depends on the day. I mean, it's very bright for me. Maybe that's why everyone uses this shade, because most people, this color probably suits. It's a bit bright for me, but I don't actually know what shade I would be using. I know what shade I would use for the foundation, but for the concealer, this is probably a bit bright. This probably would work well with underpainting, so if I put a foundation on top. Apart from the color, I don't think this gives me the best coverage for my under eye dark circles. I just feel like when you are darker skin tone, you tend to be more prone to dark circles because of the pigmentation, the darkness that you can get. You know, your skin tone in general is different. You know, you're more on the browner side, so therefore even your dark circles, it's less kind of blue, it's more kind of darkish brown. So it can sometimes it just looks a lot worse sometimes. So I feel like, and also there's sometimes you can get redness and everything too. I feel like that's why I feel like I am a good test subject for dark circles, because as you can see, right? I mean, you can see the difference. I just don't feel like this gives me the best coverage. I feel like because it's radiant, and I know a couple of the other concealers are radiant too, but I didn't really see this as an issue with any of the others other than the Charlotte Tilbury Radiant Concealer. But I feel like because it's radiant, that shine kind of makes the hollowness a bit more obvious. But bear in mind, that's before I've set it. So let me set this and let's see what happens. I'm gonna need to put some eye masks on after, just so that, you know, I can give my under eyes a bit of TLC after all this. Actually, that has set very nicely. That has actually made it look way better than what it did before the powder went on. I'm actually very, very impressed with the result after using powder, which is strange. Well, it's not really strange because ultimately when you apply your powder, it helps to kind of just mattify it all and really just kind of like lock it into place. So I guess it's given me more of a drastic difference than any other concealer after I've applied the powder. I am super impressed with that. It doesn't look heavy close up. Obviously, I could probably do with a slightly warmer shade. I agree with you there, but I am actually really, really impressed. For some weird reason, the powder and the setting of it has helped it to actually look more flawless on the under eye area, and the dark circle isn't as obvious. So yeah, that's a good one. Next is my KVD Good Apple Lightweight Full Coverage Concealer. This is medium 126. I don't have my glasses on. We're gonna go ahead and apply this, see what this is about. It's very fluid. Okay, let's see what this is like. Okay, I'm liking how this blends in. Let's have a look at this close up. Great coverage, really, really good coverage. Color I think is okay for me. I mean, yeah, it covers the dark circle, but I wanna see what this looks like with powder. Let's go ahead and set this. Like I said, sometimes some products, concealers and foundations, can actually look worse after you've applied the powder. It does look a little bit more drying. Like I've only just applied the powder and it looks quite dry to me on the under eye, like a bit powdery, you know? Whereas I've applied the same amount of powder on every other concealer and it hasn't really looked powdery to me. Does cover the under eye area, like the darkness. I'm happy with the coverage, but I just feel like it does actually look a little bit cakey to me. So that is my opinion of that. I'm gonna take this off so we can start with the next. Next, we've got the Doll 10 High Coverage Concealer in medium. So I haven't actually seen how this covers up dark circles before, so I'm interested to see. Might be a little bit light for me, we'll see. You know I love Doll 10 products. Like honestly, I'm obsessed with their products. Their products are so good. Some of the best face, lip, eye pencils that I've ever used. And even their niacinamide kind of like face foundation moisturizer things are so good. Anyway, we're talking about the concealer. So let's blend this in and see what this is like. Super creamy, so really easy to blend. Okay, I'm really liking the way that this is blending in. I really like that. I would probably go in with a kind of warmer foundation on top because it's quite bright. But you guys know I apply foundation anyway over my concealers, you know, just to kind of, you know, blend them in a little bit. But ultimately the concealer is what does the job in terms of like covering the dark circles. This is amazing coverage. I am so, so impressed with this. I haven't even set this yet. So let me go ahead and set this, but the coverage and the way it blends is so good. Okay, really good. I love how that has set. I mean, if we're talking about good concealers to cover dark circles, this should 100% be in the top 3, top 5 or whatever, but it's an amazing concealer. It's such a good concealer. The coverage is there. As soon as I put some powder, It's not so bright, but it gives me the coverage. It doesn't look cakey on the skin and it blends in seamlessly. So impressed with this. Really, really impressed with that. Next up, we've got the Too Faced Born This Way Multi-Use Sculpting Concealer in Warm Beige. Now, I usually use this on other areas of the face. I don't usually use this to cover under eye circles. I don't think I've even really tried it properly for under eye circles, but I love this for other areas. But it'll be interesting to see what it's like here. So let's go. Now, I do really like this concealer for color for the other areas. I don't know if maybe I would need a slightly kind of like brighter one for the under eye, but let's see how this goes. Actually, the color's okay. I am really impressed with this for the under eye area. Let's take a look. Yeah, I mean, the color's obviously great for me because I've been using it for a while on other areas, but the coverage is really good for the under eye area. I like that it's like this thick, creamy concealer. Now let's apply the powder. Okay, I'm impressed. Like, I feel like I could now use this on my under eye areas because I use it for other kind of places anyway. I really like this concealer for the under eye area. I feel like it's actually really good coverage. It's almost like a high coverage foundation. That's kind of the best way that I could describe this concealer to you. It's like a high coverage foundation. Like, it's, if you get the right color, I feel like you could actually use this all over the face for like coverage. But even when you set it with powder, I feel like it looks good. It looks good on the under eye area, like it covers it up like easily, it doesn't look cakey, sets really well with powder. So those are my top concealers that I have decided to test for you to see what they look like to cover dark circles. I would love to know from you which one you preferred, which was your favorite, and which one actually shocked you the most in terms of wasn't that great. I would love to know. Now, if I had to pick out my favorite out of all of these, I've got a few, which I'm really pleased about because it means that I don't have to keep using the same one. Firstly, I love the Tarte Shape Tape because I feel like that's loyal, it's reliable. I feel like I can always rely on that no matter what, right? So I know that that is going to give me the most flawless coverage that stays put and doesn't dull out over time. That's number one, not in terms of priority or order or anything, but just that's one of my favorites. The other one that is my favorite is the Doll 10. I am so impressed with that. I would 100% wear that from now on. Love the coverage, love how easily it blends in. Amazing finish to the skin and sets perfectly too. Really like the Makeup by Mario concealer. I feel like that's more of an everyday concealer. I do really like that because it is kind of brightening for dull skin too. Also super impressed with the Too Faced Born This Way and also the NARS concealer, because when I first applied it, I was like, no. And then when I actually set it with powder, I was like, actually, yes, this actually looks really good. So there's actually quite a few in there that I really love. But honestly, I think that these concealers, other than one or two, are actually the best concealers for under eye circles. So I would love to know your opinion on this. Let me know what you think in the comments box below. Don't forget that all the products are listed in my description. All the links are there too for you to go out and buy whichever one you want. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so that you never miss any of my future videos. Until the next video, take care and I'll see you soon.